somebody call Guinness for me. Not the beer people, but the Guinness Book of World Records. Why? Because I think I just conducted the longest remote notarization in history. My name's Michelle. I'm a remote notary public here in the state of Alabama. It was a doozy. And guess what? It's still not all the way complete. I just got off of the Zoom call a few moments ago, and this one was unique in a couple different ways, so I thought I'd hop on and talk about it so that those of you who live in states like Alabama that have remote ink notarization perhaps can learn a little something about the process. So, as of today, this afternoon, just a little while ago, it has taken 77 days from when I was first contacted by a law firm or a lawyer's office to perform a notarization for an individual. This dates back to June 24. I didn't realize it was that long. It wasn't until I got done, I was like, yeah, it's taken a few weeks. And then I checked my emails and I'm like, whoa. So apparently I was located by someone Googling Alabama remote notary or notarization. That is how most people find me. For those who don't know, there are certain types of documents. If they require notarization, the powers that be either prefer to have an Alabama notary do the notarization or they have to. I don't know. And in fact, I should probably ask that question. That would be helpful to me as far as marketing my services to organizations and businesses that tend to generate documents that require an Alabama notary to be involved. But I thought I'd just walk you through some of the issues or obstacles that can come up to delay, postpone, lengthen the remote notarization process. Just real quick background with remote ink notarization. It is required that both the signer and the notary use an ink pen to sign our names, and then I have to use old school embosser or ink stamp for my seal. Nothing can be electronic other than the way that I meet with the signer. All right. So today's notarization, the individual was in a European country. And so that presented a time difference challenge for us. When I'm asleep, that person's up, sending emails, making plans. And then I get up, I respond, and then that person is sleeping. So geographical difference really plays a role. And I'm sure that is true for remote online notarization as well. But hey, you'll find out it's more of an issue since the signed documents with REN need to be placed in the mail. And so with today's notarization, that was a factor. I had scheduled vacation planned the signer had scheduled and traveling vacation plans. So during those times, I know I wasn't checking my email regularly, neither was the individual. Thankfully, this signer spoke great English also, and I don't mean great English, spoke English, which was great. And his English was great. But there was no issue with the language barrier. That does come up at times. I insist that I have to be able to communicate and understand the signer and vice versa. And so at this time, I'm not at a point where I'm ready to accept an interpreter. That I can see changing, especially as technology improves over time. But for right now, I really want to have that dialogue, that communication with the signer. Thankfully, for this particular notarization, the signer has lived and spent time in Alabama. And for all I know, this person may still have a residence in Alabama. And so that meant two things. One of the types of ID they were able to present to me was an Alabama driver's license. Yay! I can accept government issue ID for this type of notarization. It's got to be 2 forms. And I love what I'm most familiar with. I'm most familiar with driver's licenses from any of the 50 states, but more importantly, license state ID from Alabama. Now, I just said all 50 states. Granted, I haven't seen licenses from all 50 states, but I've got a clue. I'm somewhat familiar. And so if someone were to hand me a license from, let's say, Missouri, Alaska, North or South Dakota, I would just use one of these books to, for the U.S., this book, to help me identify whether the ID that's being presented is valid or not. And then because the second ID that today's signer presented me was from their home country, I was able to use this book in order to verify that country's identification card. I also hang on to this. I was going to toss this, but the Keysing Document Checker Guide, I find, contains a little more and different information about various identification cards. And so I use it to refer back, even though it's dated. And I'm trying to remember why I didn't go with it. One, I believe I got this from the National Notary Association's website. I'm pretty sure when I went on there this year, they weren't selling this one anymore. They're back to selling this one. And so before I was about to toss it, and then I was presented with an ID that didn't give me enough information, so I held on to that. And then before I leave ID, the topic of ID, in case some of you don't know, I also have to check public and private records, kind of like do a people search, a abbreviated background check, so to speak, in order to verify either the US ID that I'm presented with, or I can use that information to come up with knowledge-based authentication questions, verify past addresses, licenses, utility information, etc. So again, thankfully, today's signer has spent time in Alabama, and that allowed me to pull up information. That was limited because this individual is not a U.S. citizen. So they don't have nearly the amount of information that these databases has on someone like me who has lived in the U.S. all my life. The next area that sometimes poses an issue is technology. One, not everyone is tech savvy, and I'm still running into that. Not a lot, but occasionally. But and that I'm familiar with because I do notary training. And so I know there's going to be, especially generational individuals who, for their work, they may not have spent a lot of time in a Zoom meeting. So there's that. But what I do run into, and I'm going to need to make some changes, this has come up more than once, is individuals who work with federal government entities, certain entities. Zoom is not fondly looked upon and is not encouraged, allowed on work computers, and also that's been a challenge. And it took me a while to figure out this is not an isolated thing. And so I will be looking at getting a different type of video conference software to use in those situations, or I may totally replace Zoom with something else, because it is definitely coming up more and more with general contracting firms and the military folks who need this service. And by the way, I'm finding active duty service men and women who are on the go have a greater need for remote notarization. That surprised me. I didn't expect that when I got started. Give me just a moment. The other thing I wanted to share is a frustration, not just with me, but primarily with the customer, the signers, the individuals. And that is, there are companies out there who are saying that they can perform Alabama remote notarizations when in fact they can't. And they don't disclose that until they have already collected money from the signers and performed a notarization with electronic seals, with electronic signatures. And then the signer finds out it's not allowed. So that wastes time and brings on a higher sense of urgency for the signer. And then, of course, with me, it's like they need it done now. They needed it done yesterday. And then when you add in what they paid, another remote online notarization company or notary plus my fee, I mean, it just is unacceptable. And I plan on speaking with our Alabama's legislators who put forth this law about that, to let them know. I already hinted at this. After I meet with the signer through video conferencing, I watch them sign it. I see their ID. We do all of that. It is then up to them to put that original document in the mail to me. And I really do leave it up to them whether they overnight it, and is it really being overnighted if they're 20 hours away. They I let them choose, they pay for that. That is not covered in my fee. And once it gets to me, I make every effort, and I'm pretty good at that, at doing this, to notarize, do my piece of notarization. That piece does not have to be on camera, and then immediately get it in the mail to the final destination. Sometimes it's back to the signer, sometimes it's to a third party, which will be the case with today's notarization. And there's no telling when I will get it, but I make sure that the signer and I have a lengthy conversation. Okay, what are your options based on where you're located? I ask that. Is FedEx an option? Do we have to do UPS? Do you have to do DHL? Is there something else? And if it's U.S. citizens traveling for pleasure or business, I mean, they're not living in this foreign country. Most of the time, they don't have any idea what their options are. You know, I've been told, you know what, Michelle, we don't even know where a post office is, and if they call it that. So that can add on days for the signers to sort through all that and get it in the mail, get me the tracking number. So it can be quite lengthy. And I can't recall, it's been 77 days so far. I think when it's all said and done, it will take at least 80 days from start to finish. So the majority of that time is the prep time, I call it, where they reach out to me and ask about my services, when I explain, get back to them by phone or email, and we talk about how the process will work. That's why I try my best to put as much content as I can on my website, alabamaremotenotary.com, so that interested individuals can get an idea of the workflow. Once we decide what's needed, then I send them a quote, and they agree to the quote. Then we schedule the time. When can we do this? When does it work best? And yeah, I've done some late night notarizations, but I'll tell you this, every individual has been very respectful, cooperative, wanting to try their best not to have me up and doing this at 1 or 2 in the morning. I mean, the signer, the appointment for today, it was midnight, their time, and my time was around 4 o'clock. So again, the prep time depends on the documents. We did need to rely on a third party to draft documents, send it out. I make it a point to ask, hey, let me see the form. Let me make sure that it is something that I can notarize, because as some of you know, as notaries, someone might type up a document or a letter and forget to add the notary block. So I did ask for one change to be made, a correction, an important one to me, and it was done quickly. And then I gave it a thumbs up, and then we were able to move on. But from June 24 to today, September the 8th, that was prep time. Now, granted, as I mentioned, not all of those days were we communicating. There were days when they didn't hear from me and days I didn't hear from them. And the signer and I, we chuckled about that a little bit. We both knew we've had a lot going on in the last 77 days. But once we got online, now today was an exception. Normally, once I get online with the signer, the actual notarization, depending on the document, can take as little as 10 to 15 minutes, because we worked out everything during the prep time. But today we were hashing through things, nothing wrong or anything, just based on all the factors. It took us 30 minutes to sort through things, to answer questions. I'm really big on that, making sure the signer understands the process, understands what's expected. For this type of notarization, the state of Alabama is very clear. The statutes are very clear about everything that must be shown in the video and everything that must be said during the video notarization. And so we kind of, I won't call it role play, but we do a trial run. For example, I say, look, I've got to watch you signing. Show me how you will accomplish that. When I say, Mr. Jones, I'm ready for you to sign your name, position the paper in the camera so that can happen. So we go through all of that so that when the camera is rolling, things aren't falling over. I'm not saying, no, move up, move down, go to the left, right, that's not productive. So really that's it. So what's left? After today's recording, I emailed the signer my invoice that allows them to pay electronically. I treat my customers the way that I want to be treated. Since we completed the first part of the notarization, I request half of the amount due, and I tell them that they can wait until the document reaches me and I notarize it, and I show them proof that it's been notarized before I get it in the mail to its final destination. Some signers are like, no problem, I'll pay it all up front. But I know me, they haven't met me formally. This is their first interaction with me. They may have doubts. And so I do everything I can to reassure them that just like I'm expecting them to be on the up and up, to be honest, reliable, they get that from me. I hope you found this information helpful. If you're a notary, an Alabama notary, considering becoming or considering performing remote notarizations, I hope this brought in a little more insight. I will say this, those of you who are notaries, 77 days, it's never taken that long. Never. I'm really shocked by that amount. So that is the exception, not the rule. Those of you who are in other states, and I don't have the list, I know of about 3 other states, I believe, that allow their notaries to perform remote ink notarization. Hopefully this was helpful to you. And then those of you who perhaps your business sometimes requires a remote notary commissioned in the state of Alabama, I hope that not only this video, but my channel that you are probably viewing this on has answered some of your questions. I know I'm behind in getting some more videos up. I will get on that ASAP, I promise. Thanks for tuning in. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It helps me get the word out and to reach more Alabama notaries in particular. Again, thanks for tuning in, and make today, the rest of today, a good one.